Hello and welcome to the Families on the Horizon podcast. We're excited to help you transform your family's adventure from average to extraordinary. So I'm Jimmy and I'm joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Pauline,
Hi, everyone.
and we're very lucky to be traveling full time as a family with our two boys across Southeast Asia. And if you want to learn more about our adventures, you can check out the Mitches on the Horizon YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So in today's episode, we're going to do a bit of a recap. Firstly, we are back. We finally got our microphone issue sorted after several months. So you would have seen we haven't made a podcast in a couple of months. That is basically because we have been trying to sort out the microphone issues we've been having.
And it was horrendous. Like, that audio was so bad in some of them, and it took ages. And luckily, we're coming back to Australia to get some stuff sent to us. So here we are.
And that's part of the reason we want to jump on today. So like Pauline said, apologies for the audio of the last couple of podcasts. Hopefully the audio issues are fixed now and we can just full steam ahead, because there's been a lot of interest in the last couple of months about traveling full time, escaping the cost of living and spending more time as a family. So Pauline, what have we been up to in the last couple of months?
Oh, the last couple of months has actually been quite a whirlwind, hasn't it? I think the last podcast we were actually still in Da Nang in Vietnam. I'm unsure whether we'd been to Ho Chi Minh City before we did the last podcast.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I can't remember. Anyway, long story short, 18-hour train ride to Ho Chi Minh. Absolutely horrendous. No sleep. But we had fun in Ho Chi Minh, back to Da Nang via flight. And then we moved on from Vietnam to Thailand for a whirlwind trip there, from Bangkok out to Kanchanaburi, to some absolutely amazing places. We did an elephant sanctuary, and we did the safari park with giraffes, and we saw Hellfire Pass, which was just surreal, and so many other beautiful memories out there in Kanchanaburi. So that is definitely one place to go and visit. And then it was a huge travel day, or 2 days, back
Probably
to
the longest travel
Australia.
day we've had so far.
I think so. We left the hotel on a Friday morning at 10:30 a.m. and we arrived in Australia at 5:30 a.m. the next morning.
And I know that pales into comparison to some of our European and American viewers that do big long haul flights, but us Aussies, we're pretty spoiled living only 5 or 6 hours from Southeast Asia. But that was a very long trip.
That was
trip.
very long.
And now we're in Australia.
We are here. We are back. We have done Christmas with the family. We have caught up with friends. And we are back into the normal routine of Australia.
And to be honest, we cannot wait to leave again.
I know, right?
It's been, so we're only back here for a few months. And Pauline had just saying we were just visiting family and relaxing and just sorting out loose ends. We have a container full of stuff, a small container full of stuff we need to sell and get rid of.
Which I didn't think we had that much stuff in there. But when I went there the other day, I was like, there's too much stuff in here.
I know, we just threw it out towards the end.
Threw it all in there.
And threw it all in there towards the end. But we'll go and sift through that. We got a month to sift through that. And we're currently house sitting.
We are. We're house sitting a lovely house here in Mandurah. It's got a pool and Murphy the cat and a lovely big backyard that has a basketball court on it. So, yeah, we're having some good fun here.
Yeah, we'll do an episode on house sitting, I think, at some point in the future, because we've found Australia's not a cheap place to live. And we've found that house sitting has been quite a good arrangement. We've saved ourselves $5,000, $6,000, $7,000.
Yeah.
And we're in a house that is way better than what we could have got if we were just trying to find an Airbnb.
We'd never get an Airbnb or an accommodation like this. So we are very happy that we found a house sit. And these house sits literally just fall in our lap. This is exactly what happened last time we did a house sit. 2 weeks before we needed something, it just popped up.
It's one of those things, I think if you putting it out there that you do it and you get a reference, there's a lot of people looking for people to house sit.
It's all word of mouth too. Like someone that knows someone that's been like, oh, these people, they house sat for me and they're amazing. And it's how you do anything, isn't it? Word of mouth.
Because you got to remember, there's a lot of cats and dogs, and there's a lot of people that want to go traveling for a month or two. If you've got a cat or a dog, it needs looking after.
Pot plants.
Pot plants, yes. Pauline is the proud parent of what would be 500 pot plants.
Probably, yeah.
It takes her 2 hours to
maybe
water
not 500, but there's definitely a lot.
So that's caught everyone up. So we're Cliff Notes is basically we're in Australia right now. Yep. We're just treading water. And February is when we start back on our trip. So if you are listening to this, it's now the January 2024.
I know, and the 6th day of January already. Like,
crazy.
it's flown past already. We were back in Australia on the 16th of December, and now it's the 6th of January already.
know.
Like, where did that time go?
I know, and it's just been a whirlwind. But we are looking forward to the next leg of our
We
adventure.
are.
We
Yep.
made the decision last year that we are going to continue to travel because initially it was just going to be a year-long trip.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were going to decide whether we wanted to continue or not. And about halfway through, we both agreed that there's nothing really stopping us from continuing to do it.
No.
And we made the decision to keep going. So what is the plan next year, Pauline? What is the plan this year?
Because we are now in 2024. So the plan is this house that we are house sitting currently, the owners don't get back until the end of February sometime. Now, the house is also up for sale. So if it does not sell, then we're still out by the end of February. If it does sell, then we're out a bit earlier, depending on time.
Hopefully it sells because I'm ready to leave Australia, to be honest.
Hopefully it sells because we are ready to leave. Then we are off to Malaysia for a month. We haven't quite yet decided on where, but we have to fly out of KL by the end of March, start of April, because we have booked a 16-day cruise from Brisbane to Hawaii.
Let's go.
So that is the start of April, and that will take us through to midway. And then we are in Hawaii for a week, and then we fly to Japan for a month. And I cannot wait because the kids have been dying to go there, and we hear about it every time we decide to plan something. They're like, are we going to Japan yet? And we're like, no, May is the month for Japan.
And to be honest, like as a family, it's probably the one place we can all collectively agree we want to visit. Not between meeting people that have spent a lot of time there. Adam and Lynn's, if you're listening, the Clarkson family.
Yeah, Clarkson
did an
family.
interview with them.
Yeah.
Amazing family if you want to follow them over at Adam and Lynn's. They've spent a lot of time in Japan.
They have only, I think, just left Japan after 2 or 3 months of being there. So.
And they tell us all the amazing stuff there.
Yeah.
And then we watched this guy on YouTube named Paolo from Tokyo is his YouTube channel. And he basically just like does day-to-day life stuff in Japan and follows people around and follows their jobs and bits and pieces. So yeah, we are really looking forward to Japan. And we're going to spend a solid month there. We're going to try and get out of Tokyo as well and go to the countryside, get a JR pass, go and hit the trains. It should be really good. And then after that, the world's our oyster. We haven't really planned anything.
Our oyster. Yes, this is actually amazing for us to have plans up until the end of May. Like not full plans because we haven't booked any accommodation in Japan. We have flights into Japan and not flights out. But to have it booked to at least that point, like 4 months in advance, is amazing for us because we're normally like 2 weeks, maybe a month in advance. And at the moment, we're way ahead of ourselves. So it's actually really good.
It is. So you are officially all caught up on where we're at. Super excited that we're back doing podcasts now with the audio working properly. Give us some feedback if you about the quality. We're always looking to improve this podcast. But I think what we should do now is maybe do a bit of a reflection on last year. Maybe some of the things we did right, maybe some of the things we did wrong, and maybe some of the things that next year we could potentially do a little bit better. Okay, so I'll start. I think one of the things that on reflection, we did quite well this year was adapting to the circumstances we're in. At the start of the trip, we were probably moving a bit too fast for our family specifically.
I think so too. Yeah.
One of the things with us is we don't like to just fill our itinerary full of stuff. So at the start of the trip, we were moving every 2 or 3 weeks, which is probably too fast for us. Towards the end of the year, we really started to slow down and spend a month or 2 and 3 months in places. And that felt way more comfortable for me. It felt more like we were living the life and less like we were tourists in places.
Yeah, I found that as well. Just because we didn't realize how hard it actually was to move so quickly because we're in this weird like gray area that it's not a vacation or a holiday and it's not like a permanent move to a place. We're in this like lifestyle area. So you need to then realize how much time and effort it takes to move everyone, get settled, get some sleep back again because the travel day always takes the sleep out of everyone. Then it's getting back into routine. We also do work and homeschooling as well. So when you move every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, it's too hard to get into that routine and again thing. Like it messes with everyone. So we found upon reflection that slower traveling also helps the budget, but also helps everyone with the way that we travel.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like a year is a long time to be traveling.
Yeah.
And we feel like we have to cross the countryside and see every single thing. We only really scratched the surface of Asia, but we've seen a lot in that time
Yeah.
and we can always go back and see
That's
more.
exactly
So,
right.
Pauline, in reflection, what was one thing you were happy with the way we did the last year?
I was quite happy. This is my organizational brain talking here. I was quite happy with the way we had our luggage. We didn't carry a whole lot. We had 2 main suitcases and our 4 backpacks. I felt that we traveled quite well with all of that gear. I see a lot of other people and they're carrying 2 suitcases each or a massive backpack. I did think during the year, oh, maybe we should have had backpacks because it's easier just to walk places without having to roll your bags because sometimes you got gravel and uneven surfaces and stuff. And I was like, no, because then that's way too heavy. You're putting like 20 to 25 kilos on your back, plus then a laptop bag, too hard. So I was actually very happy with the way that we traveled. We're going to be more strategic this time with the stuff because obviously having 11 months on the road, there's stuff that you need to take
Yep.
and you don't know that like
We are veterans now of what we need to.
so we can cull a few things and maybe put a few different things in that we thought about during the year. So I was actually very happy with the little amount of stuff that we packed.
Yeah.
And it was sufficient, like for the whole year. And you don't need to leave with every item of clothing possible because things happen, like kids rip their shorts
Yes.
or elephants throw mud on your shirt and it doesn't come out. So very easy to get clothes or socks or shoes or whatever you need during your time. So yeah, leave with the basics. It can always be changed out during the time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we did pretty well with the packing.
Yeah.
I must admit, like we had just enough clothes. There was a couple of points there where we maybe could have done with an extra shirt here or there.
Yeah, yeah.
But as far as like packing essentials, we didn't really miss anything that we went, oh, we really should have packed that. It was more like we packed a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And we could have left that back in Australia. Admittedly, we did send some stuff back to Australia
We
as well.
did. After a few, we sent one back, I think, in the first month. And then about 3 months later, I think we sent another box back just because we were realizing that we weren't using it and it was getting too heavy for our bags.
Yep.
So, because you've got to remember on budget carriers, you've got to pay for your luggage that you take. So,
And we had some pretty hairy moments with budget carriers where
we did, yeah.
I was like, we're going to get pinged here.
Yeah.
We got more than our carry-on luggage is slightly more than 7 kilos. It's
It
7.5, 8
is.
kilos.
Yeah.
I tell you what, travel days are stressful and traveling is stressful, but the single most stressful part of it is standing at an airport counter hoping that your bag is not heavy, is not too heavy.
Yeah. Or taking it off your back and putting it down in front of the counter so she can't see through the perspex and see that you've got your bag. Yeah.
So funny. Okay, so on reflection, let's talk about some of the things that maybe we could do better next year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this year, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think one of the things we could potentially do better this year is maybe education.
Yeah.
I think we did a good job of it. I definitely, if we were to grade ourselves, I think we did the B+
Yeah.
type effort.
Yeah.
And I think this year, I think we really need to hone in on, we did a good job on making sure they didn't fall behind.
Mm.
But I think this year we really need to round it out and be a little bit more structured with it.
Yeah.
So that's what I think this year. And that's not really anyone's fault. Like at the start of the year, both Pauline and I were teaching, and then I went to just Pauline.
Yeah.
And so that's all a bit of a spanner in the works. We also were getting used to actually delivering information. We also, along the way, worked out a way of actually doing worksheets online, which made a massive difference to being able to, instead of just relying solely on online programs, we can then go on sites like Twinkle and they can fill them out. So this year we've started finding printables and stuff that we're going to take with us, because one hurdle we came across that we didn't expect was a lack of printers. So like we thought we could just print along the way. It almost makes half sense to just buy one of those portable printers and take it with us. But I think that might be a little bit
I
overkill.
think that might be a little bit overkill because you can find a print shop. It's just the time and effort it takes to go down there and then use Google Translate to try and get what you want. But that it is doable. It's just you've got to be organized and have everything downloaded in a simple way for them to then print out.
Maybe a couple more USB sticks or something like that this year.
Yeah, and they do like you to send it via WhatsApp, but then you've got to have internet when you go down there. So
But the thing is, this is the thing with traveling, guys. If you haven't done it before, you don't know what to expect.
yeah,
Now we've been doing it for a year. We know what to expect, so we can plan a little bit better this
Yeah.
time around.
Yeah.
I already know the kinds of things that we need to take. I know the things we don't need to take.
Yeah.
And with the education, we know how our boys react to education, so we can be a little bit more strategic, get a few more resources while we get books and bits and
Yeah.
pieces and workbooks and things and take them with us,
Yeah.
knowing full well that some places you can't just get things
No.
over or
No, sometimes like we like to get workbooks in different countries because it's obviously it throws a challenge out to the kids because some of these workbooks are being translated from a different language to English. But in some countries you just can't get them. You
No.
can't source a good book that is written in English that has decent educational purposes.
Yeah.
Because one, their first language is not English.
yeah.
And two, they do not import that kind of stuff.
No, they got to remember the Vietnamese and the Thais that they're learning English at a very basic level, and they need stuff that they're familiar with. We get a Malaysian book and it'd be about durian,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't find that in Australia, right?
Yeah.
So, Pauline, what was one thing on reflection you think we could potentially do better this year, knowing what you know now after the last year?
Now. I'm probably going to have to say the same as you with education because it was such a big chunk of what we did last year and is really quite important to us. And it was very hard at the start of the year because we'd never done homeschooling before. We'd never taught kids that don't want to be taught English before kind of thing. And the kids alone were hard enough as it was. They've gone from a normal school day to us homeschooling them. And all of a sudden we're realizing that, hang on a minute, they weren't actually doing that great at school.
No.
So then we got into the challenges of them not backing themselves, like not believing that they can actually do it. So getting them out of that headspace was really quite challenging, like mentally and physically and emotionally. Like,
yeah, for all of us.
if for all of us, we had some points there during the year. Like there was one point I remember, and we're in Boracay, and it was beautiful. Like we had this beautiful outlook, and here we are having arguments and
I was ready to go home at that point.
confrontations about, okay, we're packing up and going back to Australia because this isn't working. Like everyone was in tears or everyone was angry, and it wasn't fun. Once we got over those hurdles and realized how each of the kids learn and how we need to deliver, the rest of the year went quite well.
It did, yeah.
We just now need to refine that and I think do quite well.
Yeah, we know it comes down to just knowing what we're dealing with now. That's why we would always recommend, if you're planning on doing some kind of extended trip like this, do 3 weeks or a month as a practice run somewhere, just so you can get used to it. It's obviously not going to be the same as doing it for a year, but it gives you a better idea.
Yeah.
That is probably the thing we didn't do enough of in that 3 weeks that we did travel last time, is we did a couple of workbooks and bits and pieces, but we didn't actually do like a full 3 weeks of teaching them.
No.
We would have learned a lot of this stuff.
We would have, but we were literally had an agency back home with people that needed to be managed, and we just didn't have the time or the mental capacity to be running that bigger agency for the 3 weeks that we went on this trial, plus homeschooling, plus going and doing the sightseeing. Like it was just too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So like we did what we could, and we had challenges then during those 3 weeks to add in homeschool on top of it. We might have not left. Like we might have got to the point where we just went, like, this is all too hard.
100%.
But no, it was good to do this year, and it was fun seeing the kids learn, and you can still see them now wanting to research facts. Like they come to us with all these random facts that I don't even know how they know. But
they obviously got them out of books.
Because Riley, what was that fact the other day he came to us about, and he was like, oh, Mum, Dad, did you know this and this? And we were like,
Where did you
No,
where did you learn
where
that?
did you learn that? He's like, in a book. And we're like, well, what type of book? He's like, online book. And I was like, okay, obviously something's sinking in.
Yeah. Because this is the thing, we have a lot of conversations. If you've been following our TikTok, I've been quite aggressive is probably the best word on there, and getting a lot of views and getting a lot of media coverage. And a lot of people are saying about the education. Look, if we can get through these couple of years and our boys stay up to speed with what they need to know so they can re-enter schooling, but also, and they don't have to be ahead or anything, as long as they're at par.
Yeah.
But if they come out of it being able to research themselves
Yep.
and being critical thinkers, then this trip has been so worth it.
Yeah.
And we're already moving down that path. The boys can Google things. We're telling them that if they don't know the answer to something, go and find it. And they're slowly starting to get into that mentality. Whereas at the start of the year, they were completely lost. If we could help them, they were completely lost. So I think we are moving in the right direction, but it's important when you reflect on a travel that it's not all rose-colored glasses and there's always things that can be improved. I think one thing that we did quite well on reflection is the way we handled arguments and conflict and confrontations with each other and the kids. We've always been a super solid couple like that. We don't really argue much. We might argue like a handful of times in a year.
Yeah.
I think like less than 20 times in a decade, probably. This big arguments, right? Everyone has tiffs and stuff. The thing with traveling is it adds this extra level of stress. And then Pauline brought up Morocco. And that was the day that I melted down. I was like, I've had enough of this. Let's go home. And Pauline was able to talk me off the cliff. And we sat outside because we were in a 1-bedroom unit.
Studio.
We couldn't argue in front of the kids. So we went outside and just sat out the front looking at this beautiful view. And we're sitting there arguing over like money and travel and the kids.
Education.
And
just like everything came
We sat
up.
there for 2 hours.
Oh
just
my
like
gosh.
back and forward. And we eventually nutted out a plan.
Yeah.
But that is one thing I think we did really well is manage to handle conflict between the boys and us and then us between each other. Yeah. And I think it's just testament to the importance that if you're going to travel like this, you really do need to have a solid foundation at partnership. Otherwise, I would not attempt this because there's been situations where we've been traveling that would break a couple that was not super.
Yeah. Even just I was actually telling your sister today a funny story about when we got to one of the islands in the Philippines, I think it was. Or no, maybe we got back to Cebu. Anyway, we got off a ferry and we found a taxi and we put all our luggage in this taxi. And then all of a sudden, the boot didn't close. The actual locking mechanism on his boot was faulty. So we all get in the car and he's slamming this boot down and it's not locking. So he drives off and we're just like, oh my gosh, our luggage is in the back here. There's no way it's going to stay in the back of this boot. Anyway, he pulls up around the corner and he's pointing to his mate kind of thing in these other taxis. And we'd heard that they were a scam and we're like, no, you are not doing this to us. Anyway, Jimmy jumps out.
Starts pulling the
and
bags
he
out.
is reefing these bags out of the boot and throwing them on the side of the road, and I'm in the back with the kids going, oh my gosh, what are we doing? I was like, kids, like, hop out. I need you to stand right here. And I'm like wheeling luggage over to these kids, and here's Jimmy just throwing this stuff out onto the street, yelling at this guy and telling him to just leave us alone kind of thing. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just need to let Jimmy calm down so I can talk to him just for 2 minutes. So anyway, he had a bit of a huff and a puff, and then he was like, we'll just either wait for the next taxi or we will get a grab, but we are not going in that guy's taxi. And I'm just like, if that was anyone else, I don't know how I would have dealt with it, but because I knew that you just needed to get that anger out because this guy had annoyed you.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we'll just stand here quietly and just hold our luggage until Jimmy calms down.
Yeah.
Then we'll be all good.
I think that's a good point. I can own up to that kind of stuff. And it's also just having faith in each other. It's like, you trust my judgment.
Yeah.
If we shouldn't be in that taxi, then you trust me enough to know that we shouldn't do that, and vice versa. It's like if you say something or do something, I trust your judgment enough to go, okay, that's the way we're going.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that kind of relationship, please don't travel for an extended period. That is, it's not a marriage. It won't make a marriage better. it will kind of
It's not therapy.
no,
It's not sitting there with a marriage consultant and walking down Park Lane and Memory Lane. It's not that.
no,
It's a cause of stress, a
yeah,
big cause of stress sometimes. So,
100%.
okay.
So that was something. I think, and on reflection, I think one of the other negatives that I'll just bring up, and then I'm done with that, is maybe something we could do better this year. Is I don't know if it was laziness per se, but there was some places where we probably could have been a little bit more active, as
Yeah.
in not only from a going and doing stuff, but just even exercise and stuff like that.
Yeah, like walking around and
Walking
things.
around and stuff. We're in some beautiful places of the world, and I was just locked up in an office working.
Yeah.
And some that was required at some points, but some points it was like, oh, we can't be bothered. And I think next year we need to be a little bit more like, actually, the boys, it's not just good for the boys to sit on technology for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Like let's just go for a walk or go and do something or
Yeah.
get out of the house. Now, this isn't Pauline's always saying for us to do that. Pauline's always, let's go out, let's go for a walk. It's more me going, I can't be bothered. So I'm gonna try and be a little bit more proactive with that this year. And to the point where I've like pretty much walked every day since we've been
You
back,
have
walked the
actually.
dog.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be a little bit more proactive and going, it is a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
Let's get out and just walk or go get on the train and just see where it takes us, get the boys off technology.
Yeah.
The problem is I enjoy technology as much as the boys do.
I
So
know you do.
I'm happy enough just to sit and play the computer all day.
I know.
But I know we can't do that. So do you have any other reflections that you'd like to pass on to the podcast?
I think this year in our travels, I want to try and have a little bit of a better diet. Last year affected me a little bit in terms of what we were eating. Like I could tell with what we were eating and how my body was feeling. Like I'd always feel tired and stuff like that. And I don't know whether it was lack of getting out and exercising and doing that kind of stuff and diet, but I really want to try and have a bit more of a balanced diet. I know it's going to be difficult because we found it difficult this last year. So I'm going to try and put an effort on that, is to, just have a little bit more balance.
I think next year we just got to spend a little bit
This
more
year.
on, sorry, this year.
2024 is
26
this
months.
year.
Guys, you're going to be hearing this for 6 months. I'm terrible when it comes to this. So this year, I think what we just have to do is maybe spend a little bit more on and maybe utilize these delivery services a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that we actually go ahead and do it. Because what we're finding is it's like coming home and shopping at Aldi and Coles and Woolworths here in Australia. You walk in, everything's familiar.
Yes.
You go in a foreign supermarket and everything's in the wrong spot.
So hard to find stuff.
Yeah, and it becomes a frustrating experience.
It does.
It's also like the logistics, like how do you get that stuff back to your house and stuff like that. I actually think next year we invest in one of those little granny trolleys.
Yeah.
So you can put it in there and we can just use the granny trolley and then we just leave it where we are, buy one in the next place.
Yeah.
If we're going to spend a month or 2 or 3 months in a place, then it makes sense to just have a trolley.
That's probably a good idea. Yeah.
$5.
Yeah.
And then it's like you granny trolley it down there, granny trolley back. You don't have to, because I remember one time specifically, we were in KL, we were at Antarctica, and I had to carry all the shopping back. It was like 8 bags of shopping, and I carried it almost 2 kilometers. And my hands were torched by the end.
Your hands get so sore.
And I was thinking the whole time, I was like, why don't we have one of them little granny trolleys? The ones that you just pull along. That'd be perfect for traveling. Portable one of them.
So smart.
So I think on reflection, that's something we will do better this year with. And I think that's really where we are in regards to reflections. I suppose the last thing I really wanted...
We did a lot of negative things just then. Should we do some positive reflections? We did do a lot of negatives. I think a very positive thing that happened in 2023 while we were traveling was our connection with the kids.
Yeah.
Massive connection right there. Like they have changed so much in regards to them 100%. As a person and them with us, even to the point where like Liam didn't really want to be around me a whole lot because I probably didn't get him as much as I got Riley, because Riley was very easy. I spend lots of time with Riley. I can literally look at him and go, something's not right, or he's happy. Like I could literally, but with Liam, it was different for me. So just that connection is amazing. This year has been amazing. And then I think even you and I, even though we have been together for so long,
We learned things about each
We
other, right?
learned so much this year. Strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
Massive accomplishment with strengths and weaknesses in 2023, because I can literally feel like I can just look at you now and be like, I know how you're feeling.
And me too. It's funny you say that because I was only thinking that today,
Mm.
but you were struggling this morning, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, boys, it's time to step up. Go and get the water bottles. Go and get that. It's not time to lean on mum for that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point because when we were running the agency, when it was bigger and we were working together very closely, you don't really get time to do that.
No.
It's like very transactional. Pauline, can you go print this out? You're telling me to do stuff.
Yeah.
You don't really get time to do that. I feel like we got closer after this year, even though it was
Yeah.
stressful and it had its moments. We shared some absolutely amazing moments as a couple, but then also as a family.
Yeah.
That it's like pale, like the negatives that we had, like the few arguments and stuff, pale in comparison to all the positives that we had.
Yeah.
Like canyoneering, seeing the boys jump off 8-meter cliffs and crawling through caves. We got back here to Australia, and the first thing people said to the boys, our family's like, "Oh, I don't know how you went through those caves."
Or how you jumped off that cliff.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like, how did you jump off there? Weren't you scared? They're like, oh, nah, like, you just did it.
Yeah, everyone has pretty much said that. So I think that's definitely a positive. For all the negatives that people have been bringing up lately on TikTok, you can't put a price on some of the things we've done and seen together as a family.
No. Even just those giraffes in the last few days before we left, like those giraffes.
The boys will never forget that.
I'll never forget that.
No.
Like just them coming in and being right in your face, like in your face, and wanting these carrots, and the tongues just sticking out everywhere. Like it was just so much fun. The kids' faces were just hilarious. Like hilarious.
I think also just for me, one of the massive positives, this is more for the dads out there, is just learning to be content and relax a little bit. I really learned that in Da Nang when we were there.
It took you a long time to realize this.
I've spent the last 20 years just working at a certain pace, and then getting used to working at a slower pace is not easy. And I said this when we were in Da Nang. This is the first time I really felt like content.
Yeah.
It's like content with the world, like not stressing about much. And it's a weird sensation when you've spent the last 20 years providing and protecting and things. So that's nice. And also just being able to share hobbies and moments and stuff with the boys. We've got 2 boys, for those who don't know, who are 7 and 8, Liam and Riley. And I'm starting to learn the differences between them. I'm starting to learn the fact that one of them they both love computers, but one of them likes playing Minecraft, one of them likes playing Roblox more. Learn to one's good at soccer, one's good at basketball, one of them likes punching, one of them likes grappling.
Yeah.
I've just learned this stuff because I've been actually there and doing it with them and being actively involved.
Yeah.
Which is what personally I set out to do as a parent from the day one. It's just life got in the way of that.
It does. You actually have to get out of the mindset of watching them play to actually helping them enjoy it and you enjoying it as well, because everything in a busy life is just transactional. It's go outside and play. They go out there and they're like,
what do I do? Yeah.
So,
I actually don't know.
I actually don't know what to do. So then you have to get out of the mindset as well, which was hard for me to do, was you don't have to do chores while you're out the back. Like you don't have to pull the weeds that are out there, or you don't have to tidy up, because it's just not one thing that you have to think about. So you can actually then just enjoy teaching them games.
Yes.
Like they're not going to learn this stuff by themselves. I'm sure we were taught games by someone.
Yeah.
So we've then got to teach them. You can't just send them outside and say, just go play. Like they're like, what am I playing? Like,
yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. It actually comes from the fact that most computer games and stuff now guide you through that stuff. So they put disadvantage in that aspect.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I'm a massive kid, and I think I've talked about this in the past. I'm a massive kid, and we go out there and the boys are like stuck on what to do. I just give them ideas on different games to play and things like that. And next thing they're playing their own games.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just prompt them to go, oh boy, grab one of those sticks and we'll throw it and see how far we can throw that stick.
Yeah.
It's like just things like that. But before we were traveling, I didn't have time to do that.
No, we just were too busy. Like I'd be too busy with every chore that had to go around the house. So you'd be like, just go outside and just do something. And they come back 5 minutes later, they're like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't help you. Whereas it's now, okay, let's go and think about this. They're now like playing, what's the time, Mr. Wolf?
Yeah.
Those kind of games that we used to play as kids.
Or even just down the beach, like they just run around
They just
chasing each other.
run around and play tag. Like
Yeah.
tag seems to be the new favorite game. I don't know, but
That wasn't happening before
that
we
wasn't
left.
happening before.
It could have just been the age they are now, but
No,
that
no.
wasn't happening before we
Yeah.
left. So there's so many positives. Obviously, it's important to reflect, and we'll do the same thing next year.
Yeah.
Sorry, the end of this year. We'll do the same thing at the end of this year, but it's important to reflect because it sort of segues into the final bit of this podcast episode. It's the kind of information I wish was around when we were deciding whether to do this trip. It's just a little bit more insight into what it's actually like.
Yeah.
Because the thing with travel vlogs, and we got our travel vlog, if you haven't seen it, it's Mitch's on the Horizon. It's quite popular, but it really only is the highlight reel of what we do. It's all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But there's not really much out there talking about what it's actually like to do it.
I actually had that on my to-do list for this year, was to get back into writing more blogs.
Yes.
Or outlines for blogs that we can then either get written or get them organized kind of thing. So I think we definitely need to put that out there because there's just enough information. There's so many families traveling, but no one documents it.
No.
Like, it's not documented well enough, I don't think. So it's actually on my to-do list this year is to get more. So that might be a section of our blog.
And it ties into this podcast too. We're going to continue the podcast.
Yeah.
We're going to be more consistent and more frequent now that we finally have the audio sorted.
I know, this
Every
audio.
time we've recorded several, and then the audio has just not been good enough to post them, which is very frustrating.
Or we've spent an hour or two trying to get the audio started, and by the point we're like, nah, we're done. Like, we're not doing it. It's move on kind of thing.
So the podcast going forward is going to continue to be tips and tricks, but we're also going to do a lot more sort of anecdotes and this kind of stuff, reflections, things that we've learned, that we wish we knew, just more us talking. Because for us, this is quite enjoyable just to chat. Sometimes we don't get time to just reflect on what we've been up to. And so this has been really good for us too. Guys, if you enjoyed this pod, do us a favor. And if you watch whatever platform you're watching on, leave a review.
Listening on.
I've been doing too much YouTube lately. You've been listening on. Leave us a review. I know this is pretty raw and there's probably better podcasts out there, but I promise you that we are in the trenches. And if anyone has any questions or queries or anything like that, or wants us to talk about a topic, we will definitely do that. We've had a question come in on Instagram, I think would be a great podcast, which is about Asia. The best
the pros and cons.
Pros and cons of the best places we've been. I feel like that's going to be our next episode, so make sure to tune into that.
And we don't sugarcoat things, so we will tell you what it's like, truly.
Yep. We're pretty honest and down-to-earth people, and we're going to tell you things that you won't get on a travel blog.
Yep.
So, good place to end.
Yes.
So I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Pauline.
And we'll catch you all
on the horizon.